everybody. Thanks for joining the channel's Murphy Media. My name is Michael, your host. We are joined today by Rima Ziuraitis. She is the Managing Director for Blue Yellow for Ukraine, USA. And Rima, thank you for taking the time to join us today.
Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Absolutely. Well, thank you. Thank you. I think the first way to do this is, as I mentioned, having a positive point of contact for people in the West, people that are engaged in this. Often I hear the word interest. Is there still an interest in Ukraine? I think an awareness of Ukraine is the better way to put this as to what's going on. As I understand, you're a Midwest gal. Could you give us a little bit of background in your personal history?
That's correct. I am from the Chicago area, so I am Midwest. You'll notice as soon as I speak for a lengthy period of time, my Midwestern twang will show, so I can't hide it even if I tried. My background, I am a political scientist by education. I also studied international relations as well. And I have been studying Russian imperialistic tendencies for most of that entire time during my college years. So I have a pretty good background in the way Russia operates and why it does the things that it does and that sort of thing. For me, the involvement in Ukraine started in 2014, not to this extent, but more towards the organizing protests with the Lithuanian community, going to Washington, D.C. and advocating with various members of Congress, to talk about what's happening in Ukraine, why we should care, what we should do about it. I was also, still working on a few things in projects during that time. But fast forward to last February, and I started working first in humanitarian aid. I would pack aid in a warehouse. Any day that I had off, I would pack humanitarian aid. And then the opportunity came to work for Blue Yellow, and I seized it. And most of that came from my experiences in Washington, D.C. as an advocate for Baltic issues on the Hill. So I was able to do the same thing with Blue Yellow, but also in addition, then be able to procure equipment for the military, all non-lethal, because we are a nonprofit. We do not do lethal aid, and deliver it to the front line. So that is kind of a very Cliff Notes version of my history with some of the work that I've been doing.
So you mentioned working with the Lithuanian community. That is very much part of your background, your heritage. What is there? Is there something unique about that history, that personal history, that drives you on this issue?
Oh, absolutely. I am the descendant of World War II refugees. So my great-grandparents and my grandparents fled Lithuania as Russia was coming in to occupy during World War II. That was the part of the family that was able to do that. The other part of our family was either executed for not complying with Communist Party or sent to Siberia for the same reason. So I have a very personal history with why I can't stand Russia walking into countries and trying to occupy it. That is just something I will not stand for. My great-grandmother was also born in Dnipro. So I have a small set of roots in Ukraine. So it's very important to me. And also just even as, an American, I believe we should fight for the freedom of others. It's just what we do. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Can you give us a history and the mission of Blue Yellow and what the goal is?
Sure, absolutely. So Blue Yellow was actually founded by Jonas Oman in 2014. He was in Ukraine during that invasion and witnessed the lack of supplies or just general lack of anything that the Ukrainian military had at the time. And so that was how this organization was born on the Lithuanian side. In 2019, he asked us to start the US version, and it started out as a fund, essentially to raise money. And then in 2022, it became a very large fund, and we raised about $1.5 million overnight through our PayPal. And we decided to put that money, almost 90% of it went to buying non-lethal military aid. We focus on a few different areas. We focus on it's mostly military, but we also do some medical. We've also, funded some children's projects in Ukraine as well. But we focus mainly on making sure that the military has the equipment it needs. And that can range from drones to IFAC kits to uniforms to some optics. It really depends on what they're looking for.
And I'm sure that takes an extensive relationship with the troops, units on the ground. We've seen a lot of different non-lethal equipment being purchased. What has been the most in demand? I'm sure there's a huge range, but has there been something that's been the most in demand?
Our number one requested item is always drones. And I think that goes for everyone that's supplying the military. That's the number one requested item right now. The second would be night vision or optics. And then the third goes to medical items like tourniquets and that sort of thing.
And are you seeing, as you work with these units, are you seeing, we hear much about the flood of Western equipment that's coming in. Are you seeing, and I don't say this lightly because it's all very important equipment and kit. Are you seeing an influx of those smaller ticket items from Western countries? I see a lot of effort from volunteer organizations to drive that.
I mean, I think most Western governments are focused on the heavy weapons aspect of it. I mean, I'm not going to the front line and looking exactly for, what's coming from which country. I do know that the weapons are getting to the front in most senses. The U.S. did supply some, rifles and things like that. Those are on the front. I can tell you that. I think it depends. Like I said, for the U.S. government, it's focused more on weapons. You're not going to see like small stuff, like drones or night vision that's not on the drawdown right now. So, I think, and most governments are communicating that way, that heavier weapons are more important between governments because they have the capabilities to do that. Basically, the way that NGOs here in Ukraine work is there's the big ship of the Ukrainian army, and we are the plug that fills the holes or the gaps. So all the small stuff that doesn't maybe get filled by the larger government structures, that's where we come in, and that's where we help supply.
That's very interesting. In one of your interviews, as I was researching Blue Yellow, you had talked about the importance of the speed of delivery of the equipment that you're able to bring in, that you can get that to the front lines within 24 to 48 hours. Can you break down the importance of that, how that works?
I mean, it's really like a life and death kind of situation. Like, I mean, if you're getting asked for a drone, there's a good reason. I mean, from what we understand is that Ukrainians encounter 4 or more enemy Russian drones per 1 kilometer of the front line. That's a lot of drones. So, for us to resupply as quickly as possible or supply a unit with drones is very important. Same thing with night vision, because if they have an op that they need to do and they need to go out at night when it's not necessarily safe and they can't see anything, they need to have night vision. Our partners supply that, that sort of thing. It's essential. I mean, you can't wait, 3 days or a week to get something to a unit when they need it like yesterday. So it's extremely important to be able to get stuff out when they ask for it, when you can. Obviously there's always going to be a situation or two where like it's just timing isn't working, whether the shipment is delayed, which we have no power over, or we can't get out there because it's difficult to get there, or there may be not a postal office that we can send something to. There's always going to be the exception to the rule, but every time, as much as we can, we try to strive for very fast delivery as much as possible.
Wonderful. And following you on Instagram, there is a common thread that runs through our volunteers that are engaged in this. They are very selfless people. So the bragging it doesn't, or the pat on the back doesn't always come into play. But you have recently been given a medal. Could you elaborate on that? I think that's a great accomplishment.
So that medal that you're referring to, that is my second one. These medals are given for patriotism or also for the efforts of volunteering in Ukraine. These are organized usually by units that are involved or have, you've helped them out. And for me, I will always be eternally grateful, but always very surprised, because in my heart, I always feel that all the thanks goes to the army or the soldiers, because they're fighting for the rest of us, like, and the rest of the world. I will always be more thankful to them. I appreciate and I am honored by these things. I think all of us volunteers, like, we'll never go into it for the pat on the back. If we're doing that, then we're in the wrong business. But I understand where you're coming from, and it's appreciated by me. I am so thankful for those 2 medals. They mean the world to me. And that recognition is also important, because it then shows like the rest of the world that we believe in the cause of Ukraine. And we're showing that by our massive efforts every day.
Well, I think it's a great testament to the work that you're doing. And talking about that, the funds that you've raised, the interview that I had seen they gave a figure of $30 million raised at that point, and that was several months old. Do you have a ballpark of where you guys are now in terms of the dollar amount of equipment that you've been able to move?
So that 30 million euros, that was for Blue Yellow Lithuania. So we did not, my fund did not raise that. We raised in the ballpark of about $1.5 million US dollars. And for us, also Blue Yellow Lithuania on their website, I believe, lists their breakdown of costs and where they've spent on what equipment. For us, we've spent just about 90 to 93% of that on equipment for the front, and that is mostly in drones and medical equipment.
Perfect. And I am taking notes as I look down here. And we're seeing, and I'm sure you look at this with much enthusiasm and sometimes hilarity. We're seeing a lot of information, disinformation, misinformation, and it's thrown all over the place. When we first talked, I asked you, what is it about these people that draws you to them? There has to be something special about the Ukrainian people. You defined it for me, and could you give our audience again that point of contact where you're working with these people every day, you're helping this cause? What is it about them that makes them worthy of all this effort?
I mean, I believe it's their resilience, their strength in the face of adversity is nothing I've ever seen. It's incredible to watch. The defiance against Russia's tactics is always great. I mean, I'll give you a very, besides the military, who's doing everything they can, obviously, to be resilient and fight back. Their morale is up. They're positive. They're fighting hard. I love the Ukrainian military. They're doing so much, but also just the people. The people here are so strong, and they're so, how do I put this? I'll give you an example from today. We've had air raid sirens all day long. It's been going on for probably most of the afternoon. And I was out shopping, and I was, at a bigger shopping center where there are multiple floors, and the air raid sirens are going off, but people are making their way off the top floors, because that's what you should do. That's the smart play, is you make your way off the top floors, but they're still going about their business, doing their shopping on the ground level, as if they're, giving a big old middle finger to Russia, saying, you can have those air raid sirens all day long, but life goes on, even if you're trying to make life stop for us. And I find that to be incredible. I love this example. There's no fear. People are just like, okay, we're still going to live our life, whether you do this or not. So, I mean, it's the resilience and the gumption, I guess, of the Ukrainian people. I love it. I think it's amazing. They're strong, they're united, and I think that's the biggest draw for me, 100%.
That's fascinating. And you were talking about the air raid sirens. We've seen an uptick in the amount of missiles and drones that have been launched against Kyiv, against other areas of Ukraine. And here in recent days, there has been a response to that, in that drones have been flying over Moscow, in Moscow, and of course the Ukrainian government has denied any responsibility for those strikes. We want to make sure we reiterate that denial here. There's a lot of voices here in the West, civilian, military, and within the government, that are saying that the support for this stops at the Ukrainian border. And I'm just curious as to your opinion. Do you see that as something that is warranted, is fair? Certainly I do, just to state my own opinion. I'm curious, because there's been, as that's recent news, what is your take on that?
Can you boil down the question a little bit more for me?
Sure.
I'm just trying to figure out where the question is and all of that. Sorry.
Sure. No, I understand. I ramble sometimes. There's been some pushback for the use of the drone strikes in Moscow, but certainly the Ukrainians are living with that every day. Is that, and maybe this isn't the right question for you, but is that something that is acceptable, I guess is the right way to say it? I'm searching for words.
I think, okay, seeing it from their perspective, obviously there's going to be a point where the school bully, if he keeps punching you in the face, you're going to at some point want to punch back. Whether you agree with that or not, there's a point where that might happen. Now, again, we're going to be very clear that Ukraine has not claimed any responsibility for that, and we don't know if it's them for sure. But I can see how in that scenario that could be maybe the cause or reason. Whether I think it's right or not is not up to me. But I'm in this particular case, and I don't know necessarily that support should stop if someone is trying to defend themselves. But that's just a personal opinion. Again, we don't have all the facts. We don't know that it's Ukraine. It could be partisans within Russia. That could very well happen. That there's nothing, obviously we know that nothing is impossible in this world. So, I mean, in my mind, I don't think that that's like a reason to completely cut off support. But, I mean, again, like I said, somebody's gonna you get sick of getting punched in the face repeatedly after a while. But that's, and to be honest with you, after what I've heard about in Kyiv this week, like I had some of my best friends in Kyiv, they're in their videos of kids running, screaming from missiles. I mean, that's not okay. Like that's really not okay. So I can completely understand, like, if that were the case, but again, we don't know for sure. But
right. That's been a hot topic here lately. There's been a lot of conversation surrounding that. So getting your perspective as you're on the ground and you interact with the Ukrainian people, I thought that would be a good point of contact. Donations, and how do people contribute to your cause? How do they go about being engaged with Blue Yellow for Ukraine, and the level of participation and involvement? How are you seeing that?
I mean, I think I can speak for everybody when I say that, donations have leveled off a bit. I think people are unfortunately tired, but the media does not do a great job of keeping Ukraine at the forefront. And I think everybody's attention span is so short these days that if you don't like constantly have it in their face, they're going to forget, or they're going to go, well, it's so far away from me. Why should we care? And that's, just some of the stuff that we've encountered. Keeping people engaged in social media involves eye-catching posts, talking about what you're doing, showing videos where or you can hear artillery in the background because it's real. It's not a simulated video game. I've seen comments like that on social media. Well, everything happening in Ukraine is just a simulated video game, which again makes me question the sanity of people, because that means they spend too much time on the dark web. But that's also a problem that you encounter sometimes. It's important to continue to showcase reality in this country. My opinion is, if you are questioning whether or not things are real in Ukraine, I would tell you to check it out for yourself. Be on the ground, see what we see. I am a normal civilian. I am posting as a normal civilian volunteer, to show people that this is real. It's a real and raw perspective of what is going on. It's unfair, I think, to characterize it as, there was a tweet I saw today. Somebody posted a video of McDonald's in Kyiv and said, "Glad to see my tax dollars at work." And I saw that and I thought to myself, if you actually have convinced yourself that the US government is funding McDonald's in Ukraine, we have a big problem in our country. And that's what I'm saying. Like, but these tweets, they reach people because people want to find a reason that it's not, either it's a scam or it's not real. Because I don't think people are wrapping their heads around the fact that war can happen in 2023 or 2022. But surprise, it's here and it sucks. And the fact that people also can't grasp how big Ukraine is, because the West doesn't see the same fighting as the East, at least not in the same way. And so I think that's part of the problem why you get like this like spacey attention span, or like people who don't really like pay attention, or the level off of donations. People are tired and they're not paying attention. And that's when we have problems.
Sure. I completely agree. Donation fatigue is something that I'm hearing about from all our volunteers.
Yeah.
But if folks, when they watch this and they're captivated by your story, by your personality, by the work that you're doing, and they say, hey, Blue Yellow for Ukraine USA, that's for me, how do they go about donating?
So we have two options. There is direct donation through our website. I will state very clearly that we are a federally registered 501c3, so your donations are tax-free. Bonus. The link, when you go on our website, you will see a large button that says donate. I will give you the website to drop on your caption. But if you search Blue Yellow USA in Google, we will come up. The other option is we have a account with Buy Me a Coffee. So for the equivalent of Starbucks coffee and a cup of burnt beans, you can give us a $5 donation for a cup of coffee. You can find us on Twitter, Blue Yellow USA, and also on Instagram and Facebook. So you can see what we're up to. We update on a pretty consistent basis. Actually, we just finished up doing a delivery to the East, and we will have more of those while we're here. So that's the best way that you can donate, are those two ways. Or obviously on our website, we have an address. You can send checks as well.
Wonderful. And we will be more than happy to include all of that in the description. And as you said, you'll provide me with those links. We'll post those. And Rima, this has been wonderful. I think it's been informative. I think you are a great champion for this cause, for the Ukrainian people. And you, yourself, your organization, you have a home here. Anytime, if there's anything that we can put out to keep people informed and I guess stay in their face, as you said, we're happy to do it.
I guess, and the one thing that I want to leave people with, because, when I get the why should we care, as Americans, and, as Reagan has said, we are the custodians of freedom and democracy for the rest of the world. And I believe that it is our responsibility to absolutely promote democracy and freedom in other parts of the world as well. And honestly, we have our own, non-active duty U.S. military that's fighting for the cause of Ukraine here. And, if we don't support our own boys over there, what are we doing? So I leave that with you to all think about in this particular case, to just make sure that we continue to support freedom for Ukraine.
I think that's very well said. Well, this has been an honor. And as I said, if there's anything we can do for you in the future, we're happy to do so.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. And I like the picture in your background. Hopefully, if anybody has any questions, they can contact me.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. And we look forward to talking with you in the future.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rima.